Welcome to Wayne Art Center and the opening celebration of our Quilt Elements 2024, the 16th biennial exhibition of contemporary art quilts. We are delighted to see you here today, as well as 15 AQE 2024 artists, many traveling great distances from across the United States and Canada. I would like to express my gratitude to the AQE 2024 jurors, Carolyn Ducey, Curator of Collections at the International Quilt Museum at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, Ann Johnston, award-winning textile artist, author and teacher from Oregon, and Bruce Pepich, Executive Director and Curator of Collections at the Racine Art Museum in Wisconsin. Through an extensive jurying process, our AQE jurors selected 50 works representing 23 states and other countries, including Australia, Brazil, Canada, and Malaysia. These impressive works are on display in Wayne Art Center's Davenport, Ethel Sargent Clark Smith, and Vidinghoff galleries. AQE 2024 is made possible through the generous support of our sponsors and friends. We would like to thank the Friedman family, the Cindy Friedman Memorial Fund, Fiber Revolution, First Resource Bank, Heartstrings Quilters Guild, Mid-Pen Bank, Misty Fuse Attached Inc., Studio Art Quilt Associates, and the AQE 2024 Committee for their support. This year, we will be presenting 4 AQE 2024 awards, generously supported by Heartstrings Quilters Guild, Fiber Revolution, Studio Art Quilt Associates, and the Friedman family. We are delighted that 15 AQE 2024 artists are with us today to speak about their work, articulating their vision, concepts, materials, and techniques. This is a special opportunity for our community to gain further understanding of the artists and the work that they created for this year's exhibition. We will commence our talks here in the Davenport Gallery, transition to the Vidinghoff Gallery, and proceed to the Ethel Sargent Clark Smith Gallery. Once again, we are delighted to have you all here with us today, and congratulations to the AQE 2024 artists.
Well, thank you, and this is really, truly an honor, and what a crowd. I did not expect to see such a crowd, and an amazingly professional and very, a lot of heart in the staff and in the people who care so much about this medium. And I'm feeling really very honored. A few years ago, I started a series I called Sails, and really, truly, it's a metaphor for who we are in our human existence. That we somehow build these little vessels, that we somehow make our way through life, and we are buffeted through, everything that happens in the course of life. And sometimes we set a course for a direction, and we find a very difficult way to get there, or an easier way to get there. And, there are just so many forces in life and in nature that carry us. And sometimes we meet each other along the way and sail side by side, and then we part again. And so this one is number 20-something in that series. But I really like the idea of using this very fine stitching as a way to also add another dimension of those forces that happen. And this one is a little bit of a departure in that I think I'm starting a new series called Eruption. And you think of a volcano as something that is always there. It's like a fixed thing, and we know there's so many undercurrents underneath it, and that it could erupt at any time. I don't see it necessarily as a destructive force. I'm thinking these days about the year of the dragon, and how sometimes we just have to ride the tail of what's happening and go with what's happening. And so I think I'm starting something new here. I do dye my own fabrics. I'm very specific about color. I like creating dimensionality without being necessarily three-dimensional, but I like watching the ebb and flow of the intersections and the courses of the fabric and the thread and how that works together.
My name is Deb Cashat. I did the orange store. those of you who go to Home Depot might recognize some of the things in there. I work improvisationally. I just put things together and they start looking like other things. Some of them are planned. Some of them, like the caulking gun here, just came together and said, oh, that's what I want to be. I like the Greek key. That's one of the things that works with me. So you know that square spiral. And then I start putting them together and the magic starts happening. And what else? Anything I want to talk about? All pieced. So I cut fabric apart and I stitch it back together.
Well, I'm Jane Bentley Gaskins. This is a fiber collage, which is part of a series that I'm doing that I'm calling Heartbeat of the City, which is different moments in a city that I saw that grabbed me. And my work really used to be very representational, and now I'm going to more of an expressionism, trying to get to the feeling as opposed to the thought. And this one emanated from, I guess when I was on the Washington, D.C. Metro, and I saw this smelly, dirty, ragged man getting off a car, and I looked around, and of course this is Washington, D.C., so you get a wide variety of people around you, but many of them were very polished businessmen and women with briefcases and their Wall Street Journal under their arms, and it just occurred to me that but for fortune, any one of them, or for that matter, any one of us in our lives could transition to be him. And then, like everybody else, I got on my train, got on with my life, and put him out of my mind.
My name is Toni Kersey. Although I work in abstract, my quilts do have a story, and usually the title can give you a clue as to what my story is that I want to tell. This quilt is part of a series called Call and Response. Call and Response is derived from an African root that is the foundation of African American traditional culture, mostly in music. I work improvisationally, therefore giving a nod to the jazz tradition. I try to visually interpret rhythm and movement in my quilts. Most specifically, I try to interpret percussion, because percussion is a thread that runs throughout the African diaspora. The caul, I use the Dutch wax fabric as the caul, and that's because most people identify Dutch wax as African fabric, but it actually is not. African fabric is kente cloth or mud cloth or kuba cloth. Dutch wax fabric was made for the Dutch to sell to the Indonesians. When the Indonesians didn't want it, they sold it to the Africans, and it took hold there. But everybody always identifies it, so it is also a metaphor for for supplanting and cross-pollinating of cultures. I freehand cut my fabric, and that allows my quilts to have a folk art aesthetic, as well as it creates opportunities for my quilts to have an interesting shape. Ultimately, my quilts are about identity and culture.
I'm from Lexington, Massachusetts, And during the pandemic, my husband and I started a tradition of daily walks just to get out of the house. And one of our walks took us past this really big, really old tree that was kind of gnarly and twisted, and it had like holes in it. One day we went by and it wasn't there anymore. It had been chopped down. And I was initially really sad about that. I had kind of grown to love this tree. But I got fascinated with the stump of the tree. And that's where Timelines was born. So the time in Timelines refers to the idea of that you can count time with the rings. And the lines just refers to the way that I make my quilts with little tiny lines, many of them. So I started the quilt in the way I always do, which is I paint fabric. I paint with acrylic paint, and that allows the fabric to not fray when I cut it into these very small pieces. So I always start by making a base, and here the base was a series of more or less concentric circles. And then I set out the values of the quilt with the base. And then I start laying down these small chunks of fabric on top of that. And here I started with the lightest color ring, and then I worked sort of inward and outward from that. I spend a lot of time in my work thinking about value gradations. And so here I was working both to create value gradations sort of inside to outside, and also sort of in these sort of wedges that I created that were meant to sort of indicate the cracks in the stump that I was looking at.
Hi, I'm MJ Kinman from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm so honored to be to have won this award for Cindy Friedman. And your family is here, and how beautiful it is that you're able to celebrate your beautiful family member, your mom, your aunt here. So again, I'm really touched. My quilt is around the corner. It is called Torch Song. It's inspired by, can you all hear me back there? It's inspired by, thank you, an imperial topaz that was found in Tucson, Arizona at the Gem and Mineral Show a couple of years ago by a wonderful woman named Dr. Cora Lee Wright Whitney, who's a good friend of the Smithsonian. And when she found this gorgeous, long, tear-shaped drop, imperial topaz in its saturated red colors, she said, aha, I think I found my next donation to the Smithsonian. And so she contacted her friend Jeffrey Post, who also happened to be the head curator of the Smithsonian's Mineral Department. And the story is that when they got to the booth where they had found this beautiful imperial topaz, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. They saw the specialness of it. And so what I wanted to do was really honor the shape and the spectacular nature of this imperial topaz. Actually, it lives in the Hall of Gems in Washington, D.C. right now. And guess who her neighbor is? The Hope Diamond. Isn't that fun? Yeah. And so one of the things I wanted to do was really just go big and honor her gorgeousness. And I picked 30 colors of Kona cotton in different shades and saturations and values of reds, magentas, purples, etc. And I was really experimenting with how to make quilts glow. And one of the ways you can make quilts glow is by taking a highly saturated color and wrapping it in low saturated colors. It's the contrast that makes it glow. If everything's bright, nothing's bright. So it's really that interaction of color, it's that interaction, that play of colors. And so that is the story behind Torch Song. Thank you so much. Enjoy the show.
For those of you who know me, and I heard from some of you today, this is not my typical work. I usually work three-dimensionally, and I play a lot with line and shadow in my work. This still has the line, but I have no shadows in here. This is my first foray into two-dimensional work, and this is screen printed on white cotton fabric. And then I've pulled it's with thickened dye. I've pulled different dyes through to do that, and I've mixed all the dyes that I have on here. It's called Shattered, and like a pane of glass, you can see where the center, where the rock hit, and everything shattered. It's while I was working on this, we've lost quite a few family members. I've lost my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, and a few friends in the past year. It's been a hard year, and I've felt shattered. And this is a reflection on that. And you can see it starts in the white center, your eye is drawn here, and then you move out to the darker colors. And then it was also, while working on it, I was thinking about it. It does the opposite. I was stitching it together, and I was thinking, I'm stitching my life back together. It's not the same as it was. It's different. And we'll go on, and I'll put things back together. Stitch helps do that.
Lee McLean from Canada. This is Lifeblood, which for me came about when I decided I wanted to create something that was beautiful, but that gave you the feeling of decline. It was part of a series of work that I did on aging, and this was my most current work, and it diverged because I wanted to do something that wasn't representational, that wasn't telling you what to think about it. I just wanted to make people feel something. The other thing that I was interested in when I made this was I was thinking about how does the textile artist show an expressive use of their materials. Like a painter, you can see the hand of when the brush goes through the paint. What does a textile artist do? We stitch, but when I created this design, I decided to use technology to help me. I created the design itself on my tablet, so it was only about yay big. But when I created it, I could see where my hand had gone. So what I did was I upscaled it, and I printed it digitally on fabric, and then I worked from there. When it came back to me, my design printed this way. I then worked on it in thread at a home sit-down machine. And all of the arced lines that are on here, I also drew with my hand. I used chalk lines to guide me, and then I free motion stitched all these discontinuous lines. And when I was done, I felt I had achieved what I was aiming for, and I had a friend look at it and say, ooh, it almost feels like cosmic. And I thought, well, it's really good that it allows the viewer to actually interpret for themselves what they're feeling when they see it. And I like that I had the close-up view of it, plus there was that larger view that someone else could get from it.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Levy, as in drove my Chevy to the levee. And this is my piece, Entangled. I always have my hosiery in a tangle over dilemmas of aiming for simplicity and then belaboring my work and adding more and more texture between staying in the rectangle and working my way and quilting out of the box. I also am constantly entangled, as we all are, by the pressures of life, of family, of responsibilities, of global conflict. And so I hope that all of us will look for the bright spot, the light at the end of the tunnel, and keep hopeful. Thank you.
My name is Judy Kirpich, and I work in series. And one series is called Conflict. Another series is called Memory Loss. Another series is called Anxiety. And at one point, my kids turned to me and said, Mom, why are you working in all these very depressing themes? And I am not a depressing person, but I listened to what the kids were saying, and I decided, okay, I had to bring some joy into my life. We went to Iceland 2 years ago, and I have never, ever worked in landscape form. I'm purely piecing and abstract. But there's something about the landscape of Iceland that is absolutely haunting. It is the most beautiful place I've ever been. And it still lends itself to abstract expression. This is supposed to be flat, but we had a little glitch when we came in. So maybe this is even more interesting with all of the curves. I don't know. I work with a very unusual cotton. I bring in cotton from China, and then I distress it, I paint it, I sand art away, and then I actually compose with the fabric. And hopefully it's not depressing. Thank you.
My name's Polly Beck, and this is my quilt Landscapes. First, I want to thank you for including me in this exhibition. I've been to many art quilt elements before, and they've always been an amazing collection of accomplished artwork. I'm really honored to be a part of it this year. This quilt was a bit of an experiment. It started with some painted fabric that I had made during a workshop with Linda Kolsch. I wanted to include it in a quilt with some of my solar printed fabric. I'd been trying to work more spontaneously, so I pieced the different fabrics together without any real premeditation. When I'd finished the piecing, I wasn't sure how to approach the quilting, so I put it away. Then, a few years later, during the pandemic, I took it out again, and I looked at it again, and I finally decided to just go for it, which led to this interconnected, yet sort of random and somewhat chaotic pattern of hand quilting. As to what it means, your interpretation is as good as mine, but if anything, I would say it's a channeling of my anxieties over the state of the world, the environment, viruses, wars, politics, my family, etc. I'm now thinking maybe I should rename it Landscapes, Channeling the Chaos.
I am very fortunate that I have a lovely garden around my house, and my husband and I have had fun choosing the plants to go in it. He has his favorites, I have mine. One of my favorites is called sneezeweed, or helenium. And the particular helenium plant that this came from was a red variety. Some of them change color through the petal as they go out from the center. This one was a fairly solid red, but then it has a ring around the center of gold. What I did was, from the picture that I took of the helenium plant in my garden, I changed it on the computer and made what you see here. So it was just printed on the fabric after I altered it on the computer. And then, along with taking photos, I also enjoy using my hand-dyed fabric in my artwork. And so along the side, that gives you a bit of the palette from what was used in this altered photo. And so that includes some of my hand-dyed fabric in there, and then also some purchased fabrics. And I also, in the free motion quilting that was done on it, there are a few helenium flowers scattered around it. Congratulations. Thank you.
I'm Candace Hackett-Shively, and this is my piece, Build Up. This was inspired by a trip to Iceland. I think we have a theme going here. And specifically about some juxtapositions that really struck me about the landscape there and the things that I saw. There is an area in a place called, I probably am mispronouncing this, Reynisfara. It's where the black sand beach is, and there are these basalt columns that grow up from the volcanic pushing up through, and makes these columnar structures that are huge and very, very monochromatic, dark gray, very dark gray. But there were also some apartment buildings in the outskirts of Reykjavik that were very brightly colored and almost looked like a comic. And because the architecture in Iceland is mostly built out of steel and concrete, since they have very little timber to use for lumber. They also had this very strong structure to them, and that juxtaposition of the naturally made versus human-made structures was fascinating to me. And this is actually the first of what's going to be a series. It has a companion piece also, but I am fascinated by what happens when you look at what we make as humans and what nature makes and putting them together. I actually composed this as a digital composition, much the way a painter would, laying in color and putting things together. I pulled up some skills I developed 25 years ago when I first learned how to use Photoshop to create digital art, not to just fix pictures. And after I really worked the heck out of it in Photoshop and creating this composition and was pleased with it, I did get it custom printed onto fabric. And then I spent quite a bit of time agonizing over how I wanted to use my drawing, my stitch, which is drawing to me, to reinforce and to go beyond even the structures that are there. So I hope I was successful, but look for more of these coming in my future.
I think first I'd like to say how honored I am to be here for the second time. And then when I was here in 2022, one of the first people I met was Cindy. I cannot say, like a lot of you, that you have memories of her, and I have very few, other than she opened her arms to me and encouraged me to continue to do my art, which then launched me into being in Quilt National 2023. Thank you. We conversed through emails, through photographs. She was the first one I told that I had gotten jurred into Quilt National. She was the first one, beside my husband, that I showed what I had accomplished. So I thank the family for sharing her with me. This is called Pieces. I work in mainly fiberglass screen. This is considered what's called pet safe, so it's much stronger, it makes it much harder to work with. My piece that was here last time was like 4 foot by 6 foot. And the more you work with this fabric, the harder it gets to maneuver. So probably like a lot of us artists, I don't throw away scraps until they're literally underneath my feet, and then I have to figure out where they're gonna go. So this piece had been in my mind for a long time, that these are all scraps of what I cut out other images from. And when I find 2 steps here, I am not a quilter that does horizontal and vertical lines very much. But I had a calling to do it, so it's traditionally 3 layers there, and then stitched all horizontally. And then I literally dropped these pieces on my design table, and then had to tell myself, edit, 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 which I did. And so then I stitched on it horizontally to adhere them to it. I am not a quilter that has beautiful bindings all around it, because I don't fit in that box. So it has all the raw edges on it. This is a piece that no matter who I showed it to, they really loved it. And so I knew it was the piece I wanted to enter into the show. It started, I'll say a series now, because I have another one that I've completed that's probably 6 times the size of this, that I started again with the horizontal stripes, then put the pieces down, and it hung on my wall for at least 2 months because I was terrorized of stitching it the other way. I had an aha moment at 3 in the morning when I woke up and I can't go back to sleep. I got up the next day and I started quilting it. So I'm hoping that gets into another local show up in Ohio.
People today have talked about being very honored to be in this show. I am beyond honored. I am a very new art quilter and a very new quilter and a very new artist. And so I am just blown away to be here. And I have my friend Susan Aaron Taylor, who's a fiber arts professor, who sent me the flyer and kind of nudged me, and I'm thrilled for that. So this piece was inspired by a dancer that I know. Actually, she commissioned it initially, and ultimately she didn't want it. And turns out that's fine with me, because it has been shown in a number of shows in the Metro Denver area where I live. So, as I thought about a dancer, though, of course, movement and bodies, but somehow the notion of an intact body made no sense to me when I thought about movement. So I just thought about arms and legs and whatever body parts going in all kinds of directions as the beginning of inspiration. But as I went on, what really spoke to me was all of our spirits, right? We don't know where they're going. They just have so many facets and they're all over the place. And so for me, that's what happened. And I love that people seem to see all kinds of different things in this piece. And in a lot of my other work, they'll tell me they see animals and birds and trees and all sorts of stuff, which is never what I have intended necessarily. So I love it that people seem to engage with it in various ways. So it has hand-painted and hand-dyed fabrics, which I totally love doing. Yeah, I hope that you enjoy it too. Thank you.